Right, so Chavdalad Omid Aleph towards the not top of the morning, the top of the top of the Omid. Nearby there, 1, 2, 3, 5 lines down. Chavdalad Omid Aleph. As we're moving swiftly on. And if you remember, this goes back on to the Mishnah on Chav Gimel Omid Beis, which told us about how you've got to make sure, of course, the Eidim are synchronized and saying the same thing. They may have made a mistake. So, yes, they are checked to make sure they say something, well, more than similar. In fact, it is in line with what they're saying. Which means they're spot on. Eidus and kayemes. Okay, now have a look, 6 lines down. Ton Rabbanon. A couple of examples here. Have you got the Ton Rabbanon? Echad Omer. One of the people, one of the Eidim says, Govoya Beis Mardoos. That's an interesting one. It's what's a Mardoos? Normally translated. We are talking here about animals. So look, if you've got. I think they call it a goad. Is it called a goad? You see, what they're going to be asking the Eidim is at what height did you see the moon? How high was it off the ground? Now, as we explained before, oh, very good. Yes, there's something like that. How high was it off the ground? Now, they'll have to, how are they going to explain that to somebody? How high was something off the ground? It's a tricky one. We've explained this before. Remember, we saw sources for it. The Rambam mentions it specifically, that the Dayanim were well versed in astronomy and would have known how high to expect the moon from the horizon, height. The question is, how do you explain that to somebody? So it sounds like it was a standard item that people were using. I think they call it a goad, used for animals, leading animals. And it sounded like it was a standard size as well. So they would say, holding out this goad in the distance, I think it was, and the Gemara says here, one of them says it was 2 goads, mirdois, off the horizon, right? So about, you could use a hand, I suppose, but you've got this goad. The Echad Omer Gimel, and one of them says it was about the height of 3 goads in the distance, 3 goads from the horizon. Says the Gemara, if they say that, Eidusun Kayemes, their testimony stands, and it is considered not disagreeing one person with the other, because there's got to be a bit of room there in describing. Now, it's true. If I were to ask you, is it green or blue, if we were talking about something, then it's either green or green, red, etc. But if you're talking about a height off the ground, 2 bits, if one says 2 and one says 3, that's still acceptable, because it's quite hard to remember exactly, trying to picture in your mind exactly how high was it. Well, it was about the height of 2 of these sticks off the ground, and the other one said, of course, they're being tested separately, so they don't know what the other one said. But if one says 2 and one says 3, that's acceptable, because it's hard actually to work out. We saw something similar, if you remember. We once came across this idea in the Gemara Sanhedrin, when Eidim without a watch, and they say, what time did this take place? And one said, I think it was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. and the other one said, oh, it was around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's also acceptable. That's true, you could have your quartz watch telling you exactly, but if you're saying, I'm not certain, I think it was around 2 o'clock, and the other one says around 3, that's acceptable. We've got something similar here. If one aide said it was about the height of these 2 sticks off the ground, and one says 3, that's acceptable. But Echod Omer Gimel, the Echod Omer Hey, if one of them was to say 3 and 5, then Eidus and Betela, that's too much. That type of height difference means that they're really not saying the same thing. And therefore what? Eidus and Betela. What happens to those 2 individuals who gave that testimony? One said 3 sticks, gourds off the ground, and one said 5. Says the Gemara, Eidus and Betela, but Abul Mitztafim le'Eidus Acheres. They can join in with another testimony. Have a look at Rashi, please. It's towards the end of the Omud. It's about 12 narrow lines up in the Gemara, in Rashi. Avol mitztarfim leidus acheres, echod mehem mitztarif, one of them could join up in eid acher sheyoma kamoisai. If there's another person who comes along and says on his own, and he said, I actually saw the moon last night. It was 3 sticks above the horizon. Good to see you, Robert. We're just having a look at the Gemara here, about 7, 8 lines down, a bit more, in the Gemara, Chof Daled Omid Aleph. So if their testimony is not in line, they're not accepted clearly as a pair, but they could join up with someone else who says what they're saying, and we would just disregard the other person. So it's not as if they're both lying, and we don't know a liar here. We will say that it's like their aiders would stand in abeyance, waiting if someone else came along saying the same as them, they could join up with that aid. Okay? Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanon. Hello? 9 lines down, Chof Daled Omid Aleph. Tana Rabbanon. Roi nuhu b'mayim. We saw this moon, b'mayim. What do you mean in the water? What, they were swimming? No, what it means is, have a look at Rashi, Toich nohor omayon. They saw the reflection in a river, in a fountain, or a stream. Ro'inu dumuso shel lavona. We saw the reflection in the water, very clear. We saw the reflection in the water of the moon. Okay? Or they say, Ro'inuhu ba'ashoshis. Then we saw this in, what does it mean? Have a look at Rashi here. We've got the word similar to candle, actually, isn't it? It's normally translated, this word ashoshis, normally glass, but it means some type of lantern. Yeah, it's a glass lantern. And they saw that through the lantern, through that glass in the lantern, they saw the distance, they could see the moon. Okay? Ro'inuhu ba'ovin. We saw, I'm doing the Gemara, we saw it, ba'ovin means it through the clouds. Right? Wasn't direct, it was through the clouds. Says the Gemara about all those instances, Ein me'idin olav. Their testimony does not stand. Okay? So if they say, yes, Mervyn, you're back.
I'm back, yeah, I lost you when you got us down to the Rashi at the bottom of the page. That was what I lost.
Yes. Which bit are you talking about? The Mayim?
Said that they can join, each and one of them can join, although they can't go together, they can join to another group.
Obviously, they're inconsistent with their own aiders, but if somebody else comes along saying what they're saying, they could join up with them.
But I mean, obviously, one of these is incorrect. If they don't join with each other because they're inconsistent, How can they join with, I mean...
Good, very good. Now, some say that it doesn't necessarily mean that one's actually lying. They could have got it wrong, you see. There is that option that maybe they saw a cloud formation or whatever. That's the point. So therefore, we're not sure. There is a Tosfos about this. We're not sure that they're necessarily telling a lie. But whatever, so therefore, we hold them in abeyance. They haven't disproved each other yet, and we don't know anyway which one is correct out of those two. If someone else comes along saying what they're saying, then that proves that what we're saying is one of those, the one that actually is consistent with the third man, we will utilize him as an aid. We don't know about those other two, yeah? So they're held in abeyance until we can prove, does it actually tie in with someone else? If we've got a third man who comes along and says exactly like one of those two, then yes, we will link those two together and we will disregard the person who didn't say the same. You with me?
Yeah.
So that's why they're held in abeyance, because we don't know who to believe. And what we say is we wait until someone else comes along, if that happens. Then the Gemara says in Chof Daled, Amud Aleph, about 12 lines down, if they say they saw the moon as in a reflection in the water, we saw it through a lantern, or we saw it in the clouds, through the clouds, then Ein Me'idin, beginning of line is Olov. Their testimony, Ein Me'idin Olov, they cannot give testimony about it, and their testimony does not stand. It's not good enough. You have to see the moon straight rather than through clouds as a reflection in water. Clearly, they might have been mistaken if they see that in that fashion. Therefore, the only way that will count is if they actually see the moon directly. Yeah? So otherwise, they cannot give this testimony. Have a look we saw the Rashi just telling us about the word, got the word very similar, looks like anybody into the French there, looks like the word candle, candelier, an old French word, people into old French. But anyway, that's not acceptable. You have to see the moon directly rather than through something else. Benji, yes?
I guess because you can't test them, you can't do that test on a reflection.
No.
So there's, yeah.
You can't be certain, absolutely.
Yeah. Specifically, we cannot apply that test of the size because it wouldn't make sense for them if they didn't have a clear view.
You'll say it could be diminished anyway through looking through some medium, whatever it was. Absolutely. And it's more likely that they've got a little bit maybe confused, maybe not. So therefore, you do have to see the moon directly. That's what we're saying here. Amy didn't Olav. The Gemara goes on with another example. The beginning of line is Olav. Chetzio b'mayim. We saw half a moon in the water, reflection. Chetzio ba'ovim. Half ba'ovim means in the clouds. Chetzio ba'ashoshis. Remember, half of it looking through a lantern, we saw half the moon. The Gemara continues and says, Ein me'idin olav. Again, that is not good testimony, and they cannot testify about the moon in this fashion. Says the Gemara, that's pretty clear. Come on. Hashta kuloi omrus loi. The first part of this brisa said, imagine, let's look at the reflection in the water. We said, if you see the full moon, the full crescent moon in the reflection, that's not good enough. Obviously, if you see half in the water, that's not going to be good enough. Or let's say through the clouds. You told us that if you see the full crescent moon through the clouds, that's not good enough. So why does the brisa have to continue and say, if you saw half the moon in the clouds, that's not going to be good enough? Obviously, it's not going to be good enough. Says Gemara, no, you misunderstood the brisa. Let's read the Gemara again. Beginning of line is Aiden Eden Olof. Ask the Gemara the question, Hashta Kuloi Omruslai. You told me at the beginning of the Brisa, the whole moon, if you saw it through the clouds, for example, through the clouds, that's not good enough. Chetzio mi boy. Would it be a question regarding a half a moon? If the whole moon seen, you can actually make out the full crescent moon through the clouds, that's not good enough. Obviously, if you only see half a moon, that's not going to be good enough. Why did the Brisa bother to tell us that that's not good enough? Says the Gemara, no, you misunderstood. This is what the meaning of that Brisa is. Says the Gemara, Chetzia b'mayim chetzia barakia. Imagine it was some type of waterfall. You saw half the moon actually in the sky and the other half in through the water. Or chetzio ba'ovin, half in the clouds, v'chetzio barakia, half you saw actually directly in the sky. Or chetzio ba'shoshis, half of the moon, the crescent moon you see through the lantern, v'chetzio barakia. So I might have thought, as I saw half of the moon directly, and only half I see, and actually it looks like it's the rest of this crescent moon, I might have thought maybe that would be good enough. Says the Gemara, Ein Me'idin. That's exactly what this Mishnah is telling us. Okay? Okay.
Well, I guess the only parallel we have this to now, maybe someone's mentioned this before, in terms of spotting is Kiddush Lavana, where precisely these sort of rules apply. You have to see the moon in a clear sky, not occluded by the clouds. You can't see it as a reflection. You have to stand there and see it. To be able to say the bracha.
You have to say, yeah, absolutely. And there's an additional point. You see here they're giving testimony that it was the new moon. You also have to have the possibility of it, I wouldn't say enjoying the light, but seeing the light. So obviously if it's clouded over, that's less chance you're going to actually, not necessarily reap the benefit, but, see the luminosity of the moon. So yes. You're quite right. Very similar idea. But and as we know, most beautiful bracha, the bracha of Kiddush Levana, which you can make up to halfway, so it's not too late if you haven't made this bracha found in your Sidurim. A beautiful bracha. But I'd like to, if we get a chance at the end.
And just technically, though, you can see half the moon in the water and the other half in the sky. I mean, at the same time, I'm just trying to work it out. I mean, it's not.
Why not? If you've got a waterfall, you're standing by a waterfall.
As one does, yeah. Okay.
As one does, as one might. I mean, this is a dogma, an example. I mean, actually, you can imagine that at the horizon. And there really you are not seeing the other half at all. If the moon is just setting, you may actually see the other half. And in fact, it's just a reflection of the top half, which is another good example. Yeah, imagine at the sea. There you are. We're at Tel Aviv or Netanya. Is that one of your up north maybe? And you're seeing the most glorious, not just a sunset. You can see a moonset there. And you may see the moon just coming down. Of course, that's really just a reflection of the top half in the water.
But then you wouldn't see the other half at the same time. That's what I'm trying to get out. I mean, I can understand that. You may see half of it in the water.
Well, that's the point. But
the other half.
You may not have seen the full moon. It's only a reflection of the top half. And then once you're only seeing the top half, you have not seen the full moon. That's what we're saying. Therefore, it's not good enough. And it's likely it could be a reflection. It's likely.
No, but I'm saying when you see the two together. Sorry, when you see the two, when you see half in the water and half in the sky, that's good enough. That's good, isn't it?
No, it's not. That's the point.
I see the Gemara says 1 minute.
No. That the Gemara asks. The Gemara says when you see imagine the cloud situation. If you see the full moon, no good. Even half a moon through the clouds, not good enough.
Yeah.
The Gemara then asks, well, obviously, What do you mean? If you only see half a moon, the
Oh,
Gemara said,
Amy,
no,
you didn't.
no.
Sorry.
The
Okay,
other
fine.
half you actually see in the sky. I might have thought maybe that's good enough. No, it's not. As Laurie mentioned, you do have to see the full. You want to see the full moon.
Yeah, okay,
not
fine.
Kev, I need to be careful about the wording there. A full crescent moon. That's really what you want to see.
No, I understand that, but I just was wondering about the
okay.
physicality of seeing half Chatzi
Yeah,
Banana
I mean, these
It's a
examples are, to get across a point,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
you do have to see the full moon,
Yeah,
the
no, I
full
understand.
crescent moon in the sky. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The Gemara then says a final example here in the Gemara. Tana Rabbanon, Ro'i Nuhu, Veshuv Lo Ro'i Nuhu. We saw the moon, and then we didn't see it anymore. Ein Me'idin Olav. They cannot give testimony about it under that situation. Says the Gemara, why not? We saw the moon. Kol Hochi Chozi La Ba'ozli. The Gemara asks, you have to see the moon from then on until you actually get to the Bezdin. You saw the moon. Okay, so 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you didn't see the moon. Either it's clouded over, maybe it's already set. What is terrible? As long as 2 witnesses have seen the moon, that should be good enough. Just the fact that they say they saw the moon and they didn't see the moon, why is that not acceptable? Have a look at Rashi. Kol hochi, chozi ba'ozli. Kol hochi means all like this. You have to be able to see ba'ozli, keep on ongoing. An ongoing seeing vision of the moon. Bit me as a question. Sorry. It says Rashi, right at the end, right at the last few narrow lines of Rashi, seeing they actually saw the moon. Lama lo yo'idu. Why can't they give testimony? Do they have to see it forever from then on until they actually get to Bezdin? No. There was a viewing of the moon. That should be good enough, shouldn't it? Says the Gemara, no, this is a very specific case. You're quite right. Once you've seen the moon, that's good enough. You don't have to keep looking up in the sky to ensure it was there. You saw the moon, that's good enough. But look at this example. Omar Abaya, beginning line is Loh. Omar Abaya, Hochik Omar. This is what this Gemara means, this brisa. Ro'i nuhu mei eleinu. We saw it. What does it mean, mei eleinu? On our own? We'll see in a minute what this means. We saw it on our own. It looks like we weren't really concentrating. We were chatting, as one would. Imagine walking along the next to the sea. There you are in Netanya or whatever. You're walking and chatting to someone, and you imagine you saw the moon. You say, one person says to the other, wasn't that the moon? And you look up, and in fact, it's not there. But yeah? So what it means is, we saw it of our own accord without actually concentrating, looking up the moon. There we were chatting, and both of us said, wow, wasn't that the crescent moon we just saw? And they look up, and it's not there. That's what this means. In our full knowledge, have a look at Rashi, midatenu kedei lahoid olav, so as to give testimony about it. V'lo ro'inuhu, when we look up the second time, concentrating, where is this moon? Yeah, let's have a look at the moon, rather than just chatting. Then that's below ro'inu. We didn't see it the second time. But in other words, they come forward, they say, we were chatting and we saw the moon, but when we looked up to concentrate on looking at the moon, it wasn't there. That's not good enough. Because the first time you didn't actually look at the moon directly, almost like with intention to look at the moon. You saw the moon just by the way, really, and that's not good enough. So the Gemara says there, the last couple of lines before the Mishnah, Chof Daled Omad Aleph, Ein Me'idim Olav. That is not good enough, and you cannot give testimony if just by chatting to someone you remember that you saw the moon. Ma Tama, what's the reason? Says the Gemara, last line of the Gemara. Ema, maybe you could say, Kuviso di Iva Ba'almahu de Chazoi. What's it? Kuvisa? Have a look at Rashi. Kuviso de Iva. Now, Iva, of course, is clouds. What's Kuvisa? Have a look at Rashi. Igul shel Ov. Igul means the crescent. Yeah, that's the word here. Kuvisa. Yeah, the crescent of the moon, eagle, but it actually wasn't a moon. Maybe it was a crescent, the shape of a cloud. So that's why Rashi says, eagle shel of lovon. Maybe, you see, you won't concentrate. It's not that you're looking up and, enjoying the moon and saying, wow, what a lovely moon it is tonight, and look at the stars or whatever. There you were chatting, not concentrating at all about the moon, and then you say, wow, I think we saw the moon. As you weren't concentrating to see the moon, you say there is that possibility, particularly as it wasn't there subsequently, that really it was just a cloud formation, and as you weren't concentrating, that's what you imagined it was, and therefore, for that reason, it's not acceptable. Okay? And that brings us to the end of that Mishnah plus Gemara, and we move on. So they've seen the moon, and they come rushing to Bezdin. Of course, remember the great party that awaits them. Wonderful catered affair, and it's for everybody. Anybody who says they saw the moon can come and enjoy this wonderful party. But then the main event, of course, they're going to be quizzed by the Bezdin. They are quizzed by the Bezdin. We saw that in the previous Mishnah. It turns out their testimony stacks up with each other. They've been examined separately, and their wording fits the way they've described the moon and everything else. Right, great stuff. They get a tick. What's next? Says the Mishnah, Rosh Bezdin Omer Mekudesh. The Rosh Bezdin, this has always come from the leader of the Bezdin. He says Mekudesh. The month is sanctified. The rest of the people answer unto him, Mekudesh, Mekudesh. They say that twice. The month is satisfied. Says the Mishnah. Now there's a machlokes in the Mishnah, and we'll see how we paskin in a moment, between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok. Ben shenire bismanoi. Whether the moon was seen bismanoi in its first opportunity, what would that be? In other words, we know the months can either be a 29-day month or a 30-day month, because in fact it takes 29 and a half days. So the acceptable lengths of months are 29 or 30. If it's seen bismano in its time, the first opportunity, which means after 29 days, the moon was visible and actually spotted, they come forward. That night will therefore going to become Rosh Chodesh, which means it was a 29-day month. Day 30 becomes day 1. Okay? That's Nire Bismano. It's seen on the night following 29 days. Says the Mishnah, whether the moon was seen Bismano in its first time, which means after 29 days. Bein Shaloi Nire Bismano. Maybe it wasn't seen then. it was only seen on the next night. That means the night after 30, which means the following night and day will be day 1. It's a longer month, Uber. Yeah. On both those occasions, says the Mishnah, Mekadshin Oisai. They sanctify, they go through the testimony of the witnesses. The Rosh Bezin says Mekudesh, all the rest of the people there say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. In all instances, this is what happens. However, continue the Mishnah, Rabbi Loza Rab Tzadok says, no, you only go through all of this if the moon was seen after 29 days, which means day 30 is now transformed into day 1. However, says the Mishnah, Im lo nire bismano, if the moon was not seen in its time, the earliest opportunity, it was only seen on the following night, then what? Ein mekadshin oisai. The Bezdin do not go through this, as we say, Mekudesh and Mekudesh from the other people. Why not? Shekava, interesting wording here. Shekava kichuhu shomayim. Heaven has already sanctified this. What does it mean? It means it's an automatic, that's really what it means. It's automatic. If it can either be a 29-day month followed by Rosh Chodesh or a 30-day month followed by Rosh Chodesh. There are only 2 options. Therefore, once the first option has not happened, which means no one came and saw the moon after 29 days, there's only one further option. It must be a 30-day month. You don't have to say Mekudesh anymore because it is already sanctified. It's an automatic sanctification. That's very interesting. Although theoretically, maybe the moon was visible, but maybe it was cloudy. And nobody actually saw the moon after 29 days. So as I say, astronomically, and then there was a possibility the moon could have been seen. So therefore, after 29 days, 30 could have been day 1. Everything depends on the Bezdin saying Mekudesh. If they do not sanctify that 30th day, it ends up being just 30 rather than day 1. You with me? However, if it was not seen after 29 days, then you know for sure that the month will be 30, that day 30 will remain at 30, and that's really what the Mishnah means. It's already been sanctified above, as if to say, above doesn't know for sure what the human will say, human Adim will say, when the Rosh Chodesh will be. You with me? But they do know, if they don't come after 29 days, after 30 days, there's no other option. And therefore, we do not go through all of this that we've spoken about, Mekudesh, according to Rabbi Loza Bar Tzadok. If the month is a longer month, the month was 20, a full 29 plus 30 the extra day, obviously the very next day will be Rosh Chodesh, and you don't need to go through all of this. Says the Gemara.
But do witnesses come? But do witnesses come though? Nevertheless, on a if it's not about. I mean, witnesses may come the next day, mightn't they? They don't come the 29th. They come on the 30th.
Well, there's no point if nobody saw the moon.
Yeah, I understand that, but isn't there a ceremony? Don't witnesses still come and say? So no witnesses. I don't understand. So witnesses don't come to the birthday?
No, there is no point. If they did not come in time, there's no point coming because the next day will be considered Rosh Chodesh. And remember about the setting the bonfires, no bonfire set off, so everybody knows it will be a 30-day month. no point. If you see the moon on the night going from 30 to 30 to 31 or 30 to 1, there's no point. Because
there's no point to come. Okay, fine.
No, there's no point. Once it's not been seen on the first night, then it's an automatic situation that the next day will be Rosh Chodesh.
I thought they had to come to Beth Din for the Beth Din in order to announce it. There was some special intrinsic point that the Beth Din had to announce the Rosh Chodesh.
Well, that's the machlokas between the two. According to the first view, the Beth Din still does have to announce it. You're quite right. But according to Rav Lozer Baruch Tzadok, they're only going to announce anything if it's an earlier, otherwise it's an automatic thing. Yeah, I mean, yes, I suppose that people will go around telling it, it was a 30-day month this month, but you don't need to go through this whole exercise that we've seen here with the Rosh Bezdin saying Mekudesh, because it's happened already. If it wasn't on the first opportunity, it must be on the second night, and that happens automatically. That's Kichu Shomayim. Now the Gemara says Rosh Bezdin. Says the Gemara. Yes, question for Malcolm, but you'll have to come off mute.
Oh yeah, I just wondered on Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
Because that's on the first of the month.
Yes.
How would they?
They would come to Bezdin. And remember, you can.
But how would they announce it as it's Yom Tov?
It doesn't matter. This overrides Yom Tov, overrides Shabbos. You get in your car and on you go.
But what about the lighting of the fires and all that stuff? And
the lighting of the fires is the night after. Now you see, let's have an example. The night. Let's see, they saw the moon on Sunday night, right? They will come to Bezdin on Monday, or as quick as they can. Sunday night, they're already on their way. They'll get to Bezdin on Monday, and the Bezdin would check those Eidim. Monday would therefore become day one. They will light the bonfires on the night following that to say that the previous day was Rosh Chodesh. And in that example, it will be Rosh Hashanah. So everybody would have known, if you're nearby, you would have known that Rosh Hashanah was the previous day. You don't need a second day Rosh Hashanah because the first day was Rosh Hashanah. Yeah? That's in those days. But the trouble is you weren't sure. Everybody on that Monday was thinking it might be Rosh Hashanah today, it might not be. So you've got to keep it as Rosh Hashanah just in case the Eidim come. You won't know. If there's no bonfire on Monday night, then you'll know you have to keep also Tuesday as Rosh Hashanah. It must therefore be Tuesday. You with me?
Yeah, so you keep Monday anyway.
Yes, you're very good.
You don't know.
Keep Monday anyway. And Tuesday, if you don't see the bonfire, then you've got to keep Tuesday because Tuesday ends up being Rosh Hashanah. Yes, you won't know. Yep, quite right. But you're allowed to, the Eidim who see the moon, whether it's a Shabbos or a Yom Tov, would be allowed to travel to Bezdin, and Bezdin will be waiting for them with a wonderful food. And actually examine to see that in fact, yes, it was the moon that they saw. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so the Gemara, at the Gemara, Rosh Bezdin. Beginning line is Rosh Bezdin. Do you have that? Actually, we've got two Mishnahs on this page, haven't we? After the first Mishnah. Rosh Bezdin. Says the Gemara, Mino Hani Mili. Very interesting. We have seen this principle before. Chof Daled Amud Aleph, just after the Mishnah. We've seen this principle before. If the Gemara says Mino Hani Mili, from where are these words learned from? From where are these words learned? Yeah, it means we are now looking for a biblical source. We're looking for a source in the Torah for what the Mishnah has just mentioned. And interesting, the idea that the Rosh Bezdin has to announce it and say Mekudesh, says the Gemara, Omer Rab Chia bar Gamda, next line, Omer Rab Yosi ben Shaul, Omer Rebbe, really going back, notice that triple, Rab Chia bar Gamda. So Rab Chia bar Gamda said this in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul, who said this in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi. Don't often have this triple, but it's always important to actually ascertain who exactly was the person who made this statement. And it goes back to Rebbe Omar Kro. We look at the pasuk.
That's to bring Geula.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe Geula Olam. Quite right. Thank you very much. Batome Esther b'Shem Mordechai. Remember, brought the Geula. Yes. Thank you. So yes, number one, always not attributing something to yourself. You say what the source was, but on top of that, of course, you do need to know who it comes from. In this case, from Yehuda Hanossi, it may well be that there's another Tana who would disagree with that. So you need to know the source. So I say for various reasons. Number one, Michael, absolutely right. Don't try and hold and say this is your view when really you're only quoting someone else. So maybe Gula La'olam. But on top of that, we do need to have clarity. What is the source? Anyway, here's the pasuk coming up now to Pesach. Wonderful. Vayidaber Moshe. You can pick up their glass. Vayidaber Moshe es moyadei Hashem el bnei Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu, he announced Vayidaber Moshe es moya regarding the Yom Tov el bnei Yisrael. So that's the pasuk we find in Emor. But notice it's Moshe Rabbeinu announcing. Mikan, from here we learn, says the Gemara, Sherosh Bezdin, the head of the Bezdin, of course, in this instance, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, Omer Mekudesh. He is the one who says Mekudesh.
No, but that was my question really, because there's a pasuk which says that Bezdin have to announce it, even if it's Ma'uber, even if nobody comes on the.
What was it? But you're quite right. From what here was saying that unless you'll tell me that Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi lines up with the Tanakama, you could say Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok is saying that presumably, or another possibility is, as you say, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi is following the view of the Tanakama in our Mishnah, and it doesn't matter whether it's seen Bisman or not, Moshe Rabbeinu would always announce it. Yeah, so that's a good point. Whether Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi is following the Tanakama, or maybe it's the same as Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, but he would explain that this Mishnah means when it's necessary for Moshe Rabbeinu to announce it, because they're announcing and it's up to Bezdin to decide, then the announcement should come from the Rosh Bezdin. And then we continue on. Everybody else must answer. Says the Gemara, Minolon. Where do we know that from? People have to reply, that's Min HaTorah. And the Gemara seems the inference is certainly it is. Omer Papa, another pasuk. Asher Tikru Oisom. Again, laning what we'll have on during Yom Tov, where the pasuk says, Eilema de Hashem Asher Tikru Oisom, which you should call them. Now, the word Oisom in the Torah is without a vowel. And as we know, as there are no vowels in the Torah, you can interpret, of course, you've got to read it the way that we have the tradition how to read it. If you read it differently, somebody should jump on you and tell you to correct the wording. But you could read that, and you can read it for this lesson because there's no vav there. Kori be atem, asher tikru atem. You, all the people listening to this, you must call it. From there you learn. Oh, okay. Asher tikru osom. I'll go back to that. Asher tikru osom. Thanks for picking that up. Kori be atem. You can read it atem. You with me? As you can read it atem, because there's no vov. So asher tikru o atem, you should call it. The rest of Klal Yisrael should be here. The announcement from the Rosh Bezdin, they should call it, they should announce and say Kuddush. Okay? Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchok says a different posuk. Yeah, can you hear me? Eilehem moi adoi. These are my yomim tovim. Heim yomru mo adoi. They should announce they are my yomim tovim, my yomim tovim. Eilehem moi adoi. My yomim tovim. They must announce and say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. And that's where we get, according to him, that's his source. Eile heim moyadoi. They are. What do you mean? What's the heim there? Eile, these, heim, they, moadoi. Yeah. Eile, these, heim, they, moadoi. So it's these. Haim, the people should say they are our Yomim Tovim. So the Haim is like the Atem, which means that they must announce, those people listening would announce and say Mekudesh. Says the Gemara, the final piece on this, Mekudesh, Mekudesh, Trei Zimna Lomali. Where do you see that you've got to announce it twice? The Chsiv Mikro'ei Kodesh. Interesting Lashon. What does it mean, Mikro'ei Kodesh? Mikro'ei Kodesh, not Mikro Kodesh, Mikro'ei Kodesh. It seems to be from there, there's no actually Rashi on this, but it looks like it's from the plural, Mikro'ei Kodesh. Yeah? There are Mikroi holy callings. Not Mikra Kodesh, Mikra-e Kodesh, holy callings. So in other words, the word Kodesh, it's a drasha, the word Kodesh should be repeated. They should say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. So you've got both happening here, the Rosh Bezdin saying Mekudesh, and then you have the reply, the response back is Eloheim, Haim. They, the people listening, should say Mo'adoi. They should announce it by saying Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Now, at this point, I'd like Peter, if you can, to bring up the Rambam on this point, and a most fascinating piece quoted. Now, this may come as quite a surprise to people. Malcolm's got a question first. Malcolm, question?
Well, it was just as observation, sort of a resonance with the wedding ceremony. How did that connection come?
Everybody says Mekudesh back, Mekudesh, Mekudesh.
Why is that?
Well, do people say Mekudesh, Mekudesh the way?
Mekudeshet, isn't it? Or something.
Harei Mekudeshes. There, you don't normally find the people saying. I mean, he says Harei at Mekudeshes li. You do sometimes find the rabbis saying Mekudeshes, and that's normally just to confirm. No, sorry. That's the one. Yeah, is that right, Malcolm? Normally it's a rabbi who would announce Mekudeshes, just to clarify everything's been done according to the correct rules. Now, this may come as a very interesting new bracha for people. This is the Rambam on Kiddush HaChodesh, and the parish around the side is called the Shekel HaKodesh from Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal, one of the number of writings. He's incredible knowledge right across everywhere, every possible source. And very interesting, as you follow this down, you've got here the Rambam. The top part is the Rambam. Right, let's follow this down. Kulam, 1 minute. On top machnisim also kulam achaushis kamen. Yeah, look at the. It's actually in Halacha Ches, the one we want to focus on. B'achar kach Once the testimony, narrow line up. So if you could scroll down a bit, Peter, for us, bring it further up a little bit more. There we are. Good. Where it says Nun Vov, it's clear actually. So they're very excellent. Nun Vov, v'chol ha'om oinim acharov mekudesh mekudesh. Says the Shekel HaKodesh, as we've seen in our Gemara, base pa'omim, twice. V'chsiv mikro'ei kodesh. Interesting, he's learning from mikro'ei kodesh. Well, exactly that we've seen. He's going with a second view. Well, we saw that was the mikro'ei kodesh was the proof that you say it twice. Have a look. There's a little ayin which follows down right to the bottom, the tziyun ha'halacha, the second line of that. Have you got the little ayin right at the base, 4 lines up, right at the bottom? Yeah, scroll across, yeah, move across. There we are. Rosh Hashanah, Chof Daled, Omid Aleph, Barashi. So what he's quoting in the higher part is from our Gemara. So he's giving you the source. It comes from this word Mikroi Kodesh, holy callings, Trei Zimna, Mashma. That's what it sounds like. Now, I want to point out the next piece, which will come as I think, as a surprise to everyone. Have a look at the next piece, next to the letter Ayin Aleph. U'b'Maseches Sofrim. Now, people may be familiar with all the Masechtas of Shas, whether you're learning Megillah, or Rosh Hashanah, or Zevachim, or Makkus, but there's also what's called the smaller Masechtas. They're called Masechtas Sofrim. There are various others. Actually, Masechta Derech Eretz is an interesting Masechta. Have a look at, again, right at the bottom, 4 lines up, Ayin Aleph. Perek Yud Tes Umuvo. So it's brought in another sefer. I think that's Avodas HaKodesh Khan. V'hagro, that's the Vilna Gaon, Tikein Shom Hagir Sektsas. He's corrected the text that we've got in our Maseches Sofrim. Ein Shom, you can look it up for yourself. Look there. V'tikanti Ktsas al Piv. I've also altered this according to his words. But al Pi Machzavitri. There's another sefer Machzavitri. It was a Talmud of Rashi. So I corrected the Maseches Sofrim, and go back, please, to the last narrow line. There we are, where it says Ayin Aleph. Maseches Sofrim Isa. This is fascinating. Seder Kiddush. What is the order of this sanctification of the moon in Bezdin? Look at this. V'zeh l'shoinai. This is the Seder HaKiddush, the order of the Kiddush of sanctification. V'zeh l'shoinai. This is the language of the Maseches Sofrim. Okay? B'rosh Chodesh Yoshvu HaChaburos. Next line, the groups would sit of elders. V'shel Babad means the senior members of the community, the wealthier people. V'shel Talmidim, and the Talmidim, they would all be sitting there. In brackets, for at least 12 people there. B'yoim Rishon, on the first day, Mina Mincha Namala, from Mincha onwards, Ad Shet. Yeah, that's the source for the bottom. And we're talking about all the groups of people that are there. B'yoim Rishon, on the first day of the month, Mina Mincha Namala, from Mincha onwards, Ad, next line, Shetishka Chama, until the sun sets. The Yira Hayareach, they would see the moon, Balaylo at night. So this is now the next night. Yeah? But Sorech, the Birkas Hayayin, there would be a bracha over wine. Carry on. Loima Borchato Hashem Elokeinu melech olam ber pri agofen. And they would make the following bracha, a most incredible bracha. Baruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech olam asher ba'agulo Gidel Dershov. That's quite a tricky one. Agula is normally a circle because they sat in a circle in the Bezdin. In this circle, he raised Dershov, those people who seeking out the Torah, seeking out the truth. Horam Velindom Zamane HaChadoshim. He taught them that they could understand Zamane Chadoshim, the times of the months. Tikes Yoreach Kile Levana. Tikes from like being perfectly exact with the moon. And notice different words, Yoreach and Levana, beautifying the moon from Kolil in the whole. Minon Nevoinam, among them, there are very people who understand the Torah. Shoidrei Itim, and the order of the times. Piles Tsurenu Kitzei Regoim. Hashem actually not so much calculated, distinguished between the small moments of time. Shebohem Tikein Oisos Chadoshim, with which you've got the signs of the months. Umadim, that posuk once again, he made the moon for Yomim Tovim. Of course, Mervyn will remember that gematria there, the 793. Also, sometime we'll go back to that. V'shemesh Yoda Mavoyai, and Hashem knows the setting of the sun. V'oim another posuk. Like Asher Ani Oise, which I make, which I create, V'choisem, and he concludes, Baruch Ato Hashem, next line, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Roshei Chodoshim, who sanctifies Yisrael, v'Roshei Chodoshim. And then he says, Hodul Hashem Kitov. Now look at the rest. Like this day, Birushalayim, in Jerusalem, full of joy, all of us here in this place, and we an opportunity for further tefillos. Eliyahu Novi, may Elijah bimheirov yovo, may he come speedily. Bimheirov yovo. Next line, Eleinu. Hamelech HaMashiach yatzmiach bi'omenu. May the Melech HaMashiach yatzmiach. Normally, it also means not so much grow, but be flourish in our days. As Hayomim Kashonim, the days like years. The Binyan Beis Hamikdash Yirgu Samochos, with the building of the Beis Hamikdash, may there be many joyous occasions. V'yanu Ha'om V'yomru Omein. And the people say Amen after that bracha. Yirbu Besuris Toves Be Israel. May there be multitudes of happy occasions. The next line. Yirbu Yomim Tovim Be Israel. May there be a lovely, we talk about Yomim Tovim, good days Be Israel. Yirbu Talmidei Torah Be Israel. May there increase the number of scholars in Israel. Mekudesh HaChodesh. The month is now holy. Mekudesh Barosh Chodesh, it's been sanctified from the beginning. Mekudesh Bisman is sanctified in its time. That shows you it's going a bit very much like Rabbi Loza we saw in the Mishnah. Mekudesh Bi Burai. Actually, I take back my words. It's sanctified even if it's been extended. Mekudesh B'Torah, sanctified in the Torah. Mekudesh Ba'alocha, sanctified in actual halacha itself. Mekudesh Ba'elyonim, Mekudesh B'Tachtonim, holy above, holy down below, all dependent on Klal Yisrael sanctifying the month. Ba'elyonim Mekudesh, B'Tachtonim Mekudesh, Baruch Ato Hashem, Mekudesh B'Tzion. Look at this bracha. Sanctified in Zion, Mekudesh B'Yerushalayim, sanctified in Yerushalayim. Mekudesh b'chol hamakomos, the moon is sanctified in all places. Yisrael Mekudesh, b'fi Rabbeinu, in the mouths of our rabbis. Mekudesh b'beis Habad, in this place, the meeting place. Hodul Hashem Kitov, V'goyme, etc. Hodul Hashem Kitov Kiliyom Chastoi, V'kulchem. Right, V'kulchem. And now he replies back to them, and may you all be V'kulchem Baruchim. May you all be blessed. And this is now the conclusion of this piece. After the meal, that's when Mavorech Birkas Hamazon, they would have benched ala kos over a cup of wine, and they would say Yalav Yavo because it was Rosh Chodesh. Umavin lo kos acher, and they would bring another cup. Umavorech Bore Peri Hagofen. Va'achrov, and after it, that's when they will make this bracha they mentioned earlier on. Asher ba'agula, a most fascinating bracha that's made at the. So we can go back to faces now. A most fascinating bracha that's made in Yerushalayim on this occasion of sanctifying the moon, which I say is not known by many people at all, that there was such a bracha. This bracha, I say, would there be the Rosh Bezdin, I suppose, the person benching, and benching everybody, maybe be one of the people who are kind of benching, and then following up, they would be blessing each other. What a wonderful way! And of course, there will be a suda, the meal taking place, and that would be the way they would sanctify and enjoy Rosh Chodesh in Yerushalayim. It's fascinating. And with that, gentlemen, I'd say a wonderful way to a further bracha to add to your list of brachas. I say a bracha that we look forward to hearing. B'mheira of Yomeinu. Meanwhile, everybody, I do wish you all a very good Yom Tov. A couple of points. Number one, I might have mentioned this before. The idea that eating the whole Seder night, actually, of course, an opportunity. Everybody coming together, and the opportunity of getting across full of akarasato, gratitude. That's what it's all about. The idea that, but it's not just gratitude. It's the avodah that we're doing. It's because of this Yetzias Mitzrayim, our connection, our reconnected, as it were, as we start this new month with Nisan and the Geula, and it's the eating at Seder night. Which mentioned before, I think, Laura, you mentioned the idea about Mekudesh and the idea of the Chasna. Many people talk, no, actually somebody else mentioned about the Chasna, I think Malcolm. The people do compare the Seder night like a Chasna. And it's interesting, it's quoted various sources, it's as if they're like Sheva brachas. Before you get to eat that matzah, it's like at a wedding ceremony, before at the chuppah itself, we've got Sheva brachas. There are 7 brachas, and you can try and calculate this yourselves. Interesting to try and come up with the 7. But the way it's often explained, the 7 is one for Ber Pri Hagofen at the beginning. The second one is the Kiddush. Yeah. Leave out Shechionu, because the Shechionu goes on the whole day and the whole of Yom Tov rather than just that Seder night. Leave out dripping in the karpas, because that's really there to ignite and get the children excited. So they've got, how many have you got? 2. Then you have Goal Yisrael in the middle of Seder. Yeah, when you just finish the first half. Then you have another cup of wine, Ber Pri Hagofen, number 4. Number 5, Al Netilas Yadayim. Number 6, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Number 7, Al Achilas Matzah. And then you partake of the matzah. That's the way it's calculated. Shechion is left out, and the Ber Pri Adoma is left out because they're outside really the full Seder ceremony. But it's this beautiful idea of having these Sheva brachas at the Seder until we get to this idea, which is the mitzvah of the year, really, where we're eating matzah, and it's the only time of the year that there's a mitzvah min ha-Torah to actually eat something. Normally, yes, we're eating in the sukkah, but here's an actual item to be eaten. As I say, it's a mitzvah min haTorah bo'erev tochlu matzos. And that is that connection. We've got this mitzvah min haTorah, and that is like our connection through eating. And yes, we're enjoying and hopefully partaking of the matzahs with that very first mitzvah, explaining the speed, the haste that they left Mitzrayim. That's why in the morning the matzahs didn't rise; they were already leaving. This speed and haste, showing the ahava between Hashem and us and Klal Yisrael. That's really what it's all about. And preceding that achilas matzah, we've got these Sheva brachas, and that's really, I say, a wonderful way to think about the Seder night. It's, as I say, it's full of akoras hatov, gratitude. From there, we are full of gratitude for everything. Whether we must remember that. But number two, also this idea linking up, and it's the connection with Hashem that we've got, this renewal of our connection with Hashem, particularly through those matzahs, is considered like a korban. Of course, in the old days, it would have been the korban Pesach with it, but nowadays, even without the korban Pesach, it's a mitzvah min haTorah to eat the matzah. So enjoy that wonderful mitzvah and the reconnection that we have at Seder night. Now, as a final point, it looks like we do have more than a quorum people interested, just when I thought I'd have a week off. But no, that's fine. For us, it's I can do it as it's much later here, 10 o'clock in Eretz Yisrael. That's fine. So it looks like we're on next week, all being well. Those people who want to join, that will be wonderful to see you all. So meanwhile, have a wonderful first couple of days. And all being well, those people who can make it, that's fine. Hopefully, the more the merrier. But I say, and then we should meet, all being well, I say, on Wednesday, this coming Chol HaMoed. I think that's the first. I don't think we've ever done that before. But as I say, it's a whole week of Chol HaMoed, and Wednesday here and late here, so it doesn't really disturb the evening for those in Eretz Yisrael, because that's it's after that. So meanwhile, have a wonderful Yom Tov, one and all. And wish you well.
Thank you, Norman.
And
Thank you, Norman.
Lashon haba, depends how you put the accent. If you say Lashon haba, it could be this year, Lashon haba, the coming year or the future year, whatever it is. Lashon haba will be Yerushalayim. We should all be together. Bin Heirav Yomenu. Enjoy Yom Tov, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Yeah, Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach to one and all. Thank you, Peter, for the
thank you.
characters.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. All the best, everyone.